Hey everybody, sorry I can't be there today, but I wanted to share with you a session from the NAGC conference that I attended that I thought was pretty awesome. So as you can see on my screen, this is from brianhausen.com, and you can find his slideshow there. Don't want to see my email here. Okay, so it was fighting fake news and critical thinking in a post-truth world. There's his contact information. Okay, so he started with "May you live in interesting times," and he talked a little bit about this Chinese proverb and got into Wikipedia a little bit, and he talked about how we are always trying to keep kids away from Wikipedia, but actually it's really a reliable source because it's verified in so many different ways. And so his big idea here was helping kids to question everything. And saying something is real does not make it real, and saying something is fake does not make it fake. So how do we help kids understand what's real and what's fake? So he started off with talking about the printing press and how there was fake news spread for political purposes and trying to get support for things, and starting off with some of these political cartoons and some different information that was shared. This is a story about people on the moon that he shared, and how there were all these illustrations and how people were really believing that this was captured through some telescope and there were actually people on the moon, and it was the Great Moon Hoax of 1835. So he shared some background about that. Then he talked about the War of the Worlds radio broadcast, and then the newspapers picked it up and talked about everybody in the world was just terrorized from this story, but in fact, very few people actually believed that it was true. But then the newspapers picked it up and started spreading this idea that many, many people were terrorized by that story. And then, at some point, we kind of figured out how to ignore some of these things. We don't believe everything we see on National Enquirer. So is the fake news phenomenon something that's new? Perhaps not. Perhaps it's been going on for a long time now. And so verifying sources. So on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. So he eventually gets around to this strategy. So he talked about what did it look like back in 2006. This was the NAGC website back in 2006. That's what Google looked like at the time. That was the video game of choice. That was our entertainment. That was a phone in 2006. And Facebook and Twitter were brand new. There's some news that's changed since 2006. So what does it mean to be reliable? And so he talked about this back in 2006. This group of people put out this website asking middle school students if they could tell if something was reliable. And so this question of reliability they housed in this idea of the Pacific Northwest tree octopus. And they asked kids, is this reliable? And they asked them why. And they found that the kids were really not prepared to determine if something was reliable or not. And so going back to Wikipedia, there's a verifiability. So he showed us a little bit how we can click and look at where all of this information came from. So being able to track back through all of the resources, because that's the whole idea of Wikipedia, is that people verify things and collect additional information to support ideas. We found that 62% of kids were getting their information from some of these places. And back in the day, we're like, you read it in a book and now you read it on the internet. Well, of course I believe you. So everything on the internet is true. So we found that the study that he was referencing, 44% of kids can't, they think they can tell fake news from real news, but that means that 56% can't tell fake news from real news. And that 31% of them had shared a story that turned out to be wrong. So this was a quote that he shared. I thought, really, we should put this up in classrooms. So the idea is that the smart way to do things is not what's fast and easy. So whatever can be found fast and easily, not necessarily the smart decision to make. So he came up with this idea of using this the superhero acronym of CAPES. and looking at speed versus accuracy. So we looked at fake news. So this was this little game. I guess it's an app that you can play. And he showed these headlines. So we had to decide. So Canadian fishermen, they catch a 300-pound shrimp. Is that real or fake? Turns out it was fake. But see, there's all these websites that show these things. So how do we help kids understand what's the difference? Pesto excluded from the liquid ban. Real or fake? That one was real. Praises Colonel Sanders for civil service. That one was fake, but there again, there's a website that says it. And fidget spinners could affect the Earth's center of gravity. That one was fake, but it's right there on Reddit. Walmart asked employees to deliver packages on the way home. That one was actually true. So how do we determine that we have all this information? So he took a page out of Stan Lee's notebook here, that if something is tingling in your spidey senses, then it's probably not true. Like how did we as the audience determine which of those stories were real or fake? This was a quote from Hemingway. Every man should have a built-in automatic crap detector operating inside him. So this is, there was a group of librarians that actually used this test. It was called the CRAP test for determining the validity and reliability of information. And so he liked this idea, but he didn't think it was something that we could probably use in the classroom. So he rearranged it to CAPES, since he had this little superhero theme going on throughout the whole presentation. So CAPES, so what does that stand for? So he started with credentials. What makes the author an expert, and what is their bias? So getting kids to try to figure out, where does this information come from? What makes that person an expert in the area? And what are their biases? I forgot what that slide was about. So who's the author? So he uses this chart. And so if we think about someone's knowledge scale, being from somewhere from between a novice and an expert, and then what is their bias? So why are they sharing this information? What do they hope to accomplish? How open or closed are they about their bias? So do they have a hidden agenda? Or are they very open about what their agenda is and what they are hoping to convince you of? And so he talked about digging deeper on the same site. So if we are trying to determine what an author's bias is, and we just keep digging in the same site, do we really hope to find anything that's going to display their bias or contradict their bias in any way? So he encouraged everybody to read laterally. So accuracy is the information, that's our A in CAPES. So is it up to date and is it factual? And so you had to read things and ask yourself, is this a fact or an opinion? Are people open about whether or not it's a fact? Is it an opinion that they're trying to state as a fact? When was it published? You know, going back to that whole Pluto example. You know, the date of some information is really relevant. What evidence do they use to support, and are there important details that are missing? Purpose, what's the purpose of the information being shared? So always this author's purpose: persuade, inform, entertain, or to sell you something. And is their purpose clear? So are they clear about trying to sell you something, or are they clear about trying to inform you about something? And is the point of view subjective or objective? Emotion is the next one. Is the site designed in order to make you feel something? And so sometimes I think about clickbait and how some things are thrown out there just because it evokes this emotional response in you, and you click it because you're going to put some angry comment or something out there. So after you read it, do you feel something? What do you feel? Why do you feel that way? And what is it about the information that's causing you to have that emotion? So do your emotions influence your thinking? When you read it, are you like, you Hulk out over it? Or you think, oh, well, that's interesting information. So thinking about your emotions when you get new information. So what support? What supporting evidence can you find? This is that reading laterally, looking at another site to see if you can find information to support. So what is their claim? And I liked this idea of triangulating the claim with 3 other sources. So finding that information in multiple places, because so often, we can't just blanketly say everything on the internet is real or everything on the internet is fake, but can you substantiate it with additional sources? Can you document that evidence? So that's his CAPES, the credentials, accuracy, purpose, emotion, and support to determine if something is unreliable or trustworthy. So this crisis of authenticity, to be skeptical, and thinking about, are people villains or are they heroes? Are they a little bit of both? Then he went on to talk about that show on NPR, the Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, and it's an actual show where they try to trick listeners. It's called the Bluff the Listener game, which I thought might be really interesting to play with students. There's a whole bunch of them that you can go and listen to. And then a task that we might try with students, to picking 2 news stories or websites that seem unlikely but are factual. Find 1 news story or website that was at least somewhat plausible, and then create a document or slides that contain the 3 stories. And so either having kids create that or you create it to practice with students. So here are some questions to help remind them of that CAPES strategy. What's being said? When was the information posted? How does it make you feel? And why is it being posted? So I thought that was a good list of questions. And I liked this one. And then thinking about our own bias, he talked about the lasso of truth, keeping with the superhero theme. And these were, he talked a little bit about this flat earth movement, which I had no idea was a thing, but apparently it is a thing. There's a group of people who believe that the earth is flat, and you'll have to check out the website. There's some people out there that think they have some evidence that the earth is flat, so you'll have to check that out. And then talking about the future of fake news, this was kind of scary. There are some websites out there that will allow you to take someone's voice and put some words, and it will use their facial expressions and their voice and have that person say it. So if I wanted to have President Trump say that, Mrs. Dittman is the most amazing person ever, I could use this app to make him say that, and it would look like it would sound like him, it would look like him saying it. Here are some websites to help combat this website called All Sides. And so they have web stories from the left, from the right, and from the center on the same topics. You can Skype a scientist, which I thought was kind of cool. You can actually talk to science professionals in the community to help combat. And so using multiple resources is kind of the common sense approach. Here's some other websites: Fact Check, PolitiFact, and Snopes. I think we should all teach kids about Snopes at least, but even Snopes recognizes that they can't be the only person saying whether something is true or not true. And so they're saying, hey, we're trying our best here, but don't believe that any one source is the best source or the only source about whether something is reliable and truthful. So, yeah, if the next trend could be thinking, that would be great. And suddenly 1984 is a bestseller, surprise, surprise. And I thought this was an interesting quote. So stay vigilant was his overall message. And if you smell something, say something. And there's his information. I know I went through this super fast. I got a 15-minute time limit on this free Screencast-O-Matic. So hopefully you got some good information out of this, and hope it's something you can use in your classroom. Thanks.